Hi everyone, and welcome to another electrifying episode of Patrik's Tech Lightning. In today's episode, we are diving into deep waters of the world of Azure on how to design a log analytics workspace effectively. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of where to place your workspaces and the key consideration for determining the optimal number for your environment. So let's jump straight in and get started. Here we go. We're going to zoom far out of our Azure environment in order to see where the Log Analytics Workspaces fits in. Microsoft, they have documented guidance on how to move a business to the cloud using their cloud adoption framework. I have an excellent video which is linked in the description below to get a bit more deep dive into this. But in short, we can say that the cloud adoption framework, it provides best practices for an enterprise scale landing zone with a focus on a hub and spoke model. One important factor here, in this video, I will be focusing only on a single tenant. In general, we can say the enterprise scale landing zone for Microsoft, it's not a hard rule, it's prefer one subscription per application. We will see the shared services such as the firewall, DNS and express routes are to be located in their own subscription called connectivity. Looking further, we have to ask ourselves, where are the log analytics workspaces located? For this, we have to look at the management subscription. And there they are, preferably in the central subscription, which collects data from resources located in all other subscriptions. There is no documented limit on the amount of data that a log analytics workspace can contain. Of course, you have to remember that you will be built accordingly. But in theory, you could just have one log analytics workspace regardless how large your environment or how much data that comes into it. Now, let's dive even a bit deeper into the belly of the whale to see if there are other design options for our log analytics workspace. Before we decide if we should have one or multiple, it's essential to know if we're either going to use Microsoft Sentinel or Defender for cloud in the environment. Because, for example, Microsoft Sentinel, that's actually enabled per workspace and is an all or nothing approach. As you may have guessed, there's of course an extra cost with Microsoft Sentinel, which means that all the data stored in this workspace will be subject to the pricing by Microsoft. You may have resources in the Azure environment where you need logging, but without Microsoft Sentinel. That's one of the reasons why it would make sense to split up into multiple workspaces. Also, if you look into the operational side, your security team, they may want to have their own dedicated workspace. So we've looked at one reason to split up the workspaces into multiple ones, but let's look at some more. Retention and compliance, that's where the different departments have varying requirements for your data retention policies. You may have a bunch of applications with less stringent legal requirements with regards to retention. Perhaps it is a good idea to put them in a separate workspace with less retention and save some of your company's hard-earned cash. On the other hand, you also have something called commitment tiers. This is where you commit and pay for a certain amount of daily data in the workspace, but you get it at a reduced price on the ingestion cost. This calculation has to be done carefully, as it may make sense to collect as many resources as financially beneficial and put them all in one workspace so you can have a good commitment tier. If we talk about compliance, each workspace will be located in a specific region, such as, for example, West Europe. Your branch office is located in another region. They may require the data to remain in that region. And this is actually one of the most common and valid reasons to use multiple workspaces. Looking at security and RBAC of the workspace, there are also things to be considered here. When you grant a user access to a workspace, they by default have access to all the data in that workspace. So this is usually approachable for the security team who needs to have access to all the data and logs. But you can, for example, also use table-level RBAC, where you grant only access to a specific team for a table. They will only be able to access and see that specific data. Most of the security configuration can actually be dealt, and you can split up the security within having a single workspace. But there may be regulatory requirements to split up into multiple workspaces depending on your access requirements. The last point to mention is resilience. A failure of a region in Azure where the workspace is located makes the information and data unavailable. So I've actually seen customers set up additional workspaces in other regions in order to additionally store critical data there in case of a full region failure. Now that we know how to design it a bit, let's dive even deeper into making the most cost-effective log analytics workspace. For this, there are 3 pillars that I believe are important. First, you have the data ingestion, right? So the volume of the data that you ingest into your workspace directly influences the cost. That makes sense. You have the data retention strategies. So remember what I said about multiple workspaces and retention? Well, retention policies are important as any data outside of these policies will automatically be purged by Azure. So you save the cost on that one. Third pillar, cost management. You have to leverage the Azure cost management and billing to get an insight into your usage pattern. So using this tool, you can get a good idea how much you've been using and project into the future. Jumping to point 1 for data ingestion, we are focusing on making sure that only the required logs are sent to the workspace. You can do this, for example, with data collection rules, DCRs, as we can easily configure them for certain types of logs. So if we're going to take a look at that, we can open up the DCR that we have configured here. We go to data sources and you can see we have configured Windows event logs. There are many configuration options underneath, and this is where you select the logs that you want to have collected. In this scenario, may also want to have the system logs defined as critical and error to come into this workspace. That's it. We click on the configuration and this will automatically be applied to the resources, which are virtual machines in this case, which are assigned to this DCR. To do this properly on an enterprise scale, you would actually use Azure policies to perform the correct logging on a higher level, because you don't want each administrator to have to decide and figure out for themselves what type of logging they want. Secondly, the next item are the data retention strategies. Obviously, the longer you require data, the more cost will be associated to your workspace. There are 2 ways in Azure Monitor to retain data. You have interactive retention, which lets you retain logs for interactive queries for up to 2 years. This has a default retention of 30 to 31 days, which is actually included in the price. Additional retention periods aside of this is charged accordingly. The other one that we have is called archived, which lets you keep older, less used data in a workspace at a reduced cost. You can access this data by restoring and has a retention of up to 12 years. Now, there is of course an additional charge with querying this archived data. The third tips, as mentioned, is looking at the managed cost of your log analytics workspace. Let's open up our workspace in the Azure portal, select usage and estimated costs. Here's where you can select the commitment tier. Either you keep it as pay as you go and pay for the usage, or you know approximately how much data you're about to ingest. You can see it starts with a 15% discount at 100 gigabytes. As with most services, the higher the commitment tier, the larger the discount. This is usually something that is enabled after the workload and logs are collected in Azure are known. So if you haven't moved any workload to Azure yet, it's extremely difficult to in advance decide on a commitment tier. You simply will not know how much log or how much data that will be stored there. There you have it, folks. I have covered the most important design decisions when implementing a log analytics workspace, along with ideas on how to cost optimize it. There are a lot of things to consider when estimating the cost of Azure Monitor and Log Analytics. Armed with the knowledge in this video, you are now able to properly design and estimate the cost of Azure Monitor with a Log Analytics workspace. Until next time, take care, see ya!